viewers, welcome to Ukentv. I'm your presenter, Janet Wenena. Very excited to be right here with you. Today on the program, I'm going to talk to you about your carbon footprints. Do you know how well you recycle? Do you even try? Some of us drive all the way to wherever you want to go, not considering taking public transport. And all these things that we do don't only affect us, they affect people who do not have the luxury in life like we do. I happened to meet Rushanara Ali, who is MP for Bethnal Green. She went all the way to Kenya to find out how do those people in the northeastern Kenya live, especially Wajir. How do they live? How have they adapted to the climatic change happening right there where they know their livelihood depends on? Those are the people down at the ground who are affected by the things that you do here today. Well, this was an initiative by Islamic Relief. And again, many people hear Islamic and they think, well, it has to be bad. But when I listened to this report, Feeling the Heat by Islamic Relief, it made me think, what can I do to change the trend of the climatic change? But before I make up that mind, I want you viewers to hear what the MP for Bethnal Green had to say after visiting Kenya and what the report, Feeling the Heat, is all about.
I wanted to go to see what is happening in northern Kenya because for two major reasons. The first is that I've had a long-held interest in the impact of climate change on countries like Bangladesh, countries in East Africa like Somalia, which is obviously complicated by the conflict there as well, and parts of Kenya and across a range of countries that are going to suffer more and more with the effects of climate change. And some of you will know that since my election, I've been focusing on drawing attention in the UK, among the government, but also in the media, on the impact of climate change on countries at the forefront, like Bangladesh, and like Somalia, and northern Kenya, and so on, and East Africa. And when we saw the famine last year break out, it in a way brought home the fact that we in the international community, we in the UK, having put a lot of support, a lot of funding into aid, into dealing with the effects of climate change, had still only scratched the surface. And while I am incredibly proud of what my party did in government in leading the way in international development, it became clear that so much more needs to be done. I want to turn now to the visit. We went on a 5-day visit. I had hoped to spend a day or two in Somalia, and that was originally what was planned, but unfortunately, because of the volatility there and the conflict and the security situation, I didn't make it beyond the airport in Mogadishu. So I did touch Somali soil, but didn't quite manage to get out of the airport. But I do hope that I will be able to go another time. For me, I feel very strongly that as the MP for one of the largest British Somali communities, and as the Shadow Minister for International Development, it is my responsibility to go and see how things are progressing in that country and keep the pressure on the UK government to do more to resolve the conflict there, which is making people's lives unbearable, coupled with the food shortages, coupled with the impact of climate change. So, and many of you will know, countries where there are conflicts that are fragile states and also have issues of climate change to deal with, as well as being developing economies or not even at that point, are at the most vulnerable. Their populations are at the most vulnerable and most at risk. So we have a responsibility to keep the attention on countries like Somalia, alongside other countries like Bangladesh that are surely, as we know, at the forefront of the threat of climate change. And we're already seeing the number of refugees going up, climate refugees, and that's only going to grow. So we have to find ways of making the connection between what happens here in the UK and what happens there in places that may seem to people far-flung, but actually the issues that affect us are interdependent.
Here is the lack of food. There are many people who are on the margins of starvation, who are not getting help, which is very alarming. I've just been talking to some of the mums who have said they can go for 2 days, sometimes longer, without food. They're lucky if they get a meal a day. So it's a very difficult situation.
And the final related issue is conflict. Conflict is going to be over water, over food, and we're already seeing that. We're already seeing the emergence of that in small communities and all the way through at the level of nation states. That's going to get worse. So the international community does need to do much, much more. And it's really, really important that NGOs like Islamic Relief, working with others and working with people like yourselves and people in, in communities like ours, keeping the pressure on the government is going to be absolutely crucial. And as a party, we will continue to make that commitment. And if we are in government, which I hope we will be by 2015, I believe that as a party, we will make the issue of climate change and development an absolute priority, as we did when we were in power before. And we will be ambitious about what needs to be addressed. It means eradicating poverty. It cannot be acceptable that in the 21st century, people are dying of hunger and thirst. It just cannot be acceptable. We cannot live in a world like that. And I do believe that if governments put their mind to it, and if there is proper international leadership, which is lacking at the moment, then it can be done. Thank you.
Fantastic. I was intrigued to find out why Northern Kenya. Why did you decide to go all the way to Wajir to find out about, the climatic change?
Well, I felt that last year when the famine happened, I wanted to go there immediately because because it's the border of Somalia, because of the conflict and the effects of that conflict on northern Kenya, and the fact that I have many people from Somalia in my constituency. I wanted to go and see what was happening and how the government in Kenya, and especially in northern Kenya, was then responding to the challenges posed by movement of people, but also the fact that there was huge drought and the consequences of that on the people of Wajir. So it was an opportunity to see, what was happening and to try and get a better understanding of how a country like Kenya engages with what's happening in Somalia when people move out of Somalia because of the conflict.
Yes.
That's right. And also how we in the international community can help, how Britain can help, and what Britain is doing, what aid money given by British taxpayers is doing to help people who faced what has been one of the worst droughts in living memory, which happened last year. So I felt that it would be a good place to go and visit to see what's happening.
As we're doing work, and we've been doing over the last number of years, we're realizing that the reality of climate change and what it means in areas like East Africa and Kenya and Somalia. So our research has shown us that if we invest in climate change adaptation programs, if we invest in disaster risk reduction, then the people on the ground won't feel the impact of the heat and the change in circumstances as much, providing we invest before the actual disaster. And so this report is an attempt ahead of the party conferences, in Labour Party conference and the Conservative Party conferences, where we'll be launching this report, pushing the politicians and the policymakers and the decision makers to ensure that we invest in the right way to be able to help people in East Africa and Kenya and beyond.
Having worked with the government here, as you're saying,
Yes.
you want to push the policies
Sure.
here, and having worked with a country like Kenya, where I come from,
Sure.
how do you think we can push the government to do some of the work that you're doing at the grassroots, or rather maybe to support your work?
That's right.
What can the government do?
The government here?
The government in Kenya,
okay.
Because obviously your work is transcending across borders.
Sure. We need to ensure that the communities that we're working with work along sustainable solutions. Sustainable solutions, we have to work with local authorities. When I was in Bangladesh last week, the work that we were doing in disaster risk reduction prevention is in collaboration, in partnership with the local authorities of Sylhet, local authorities. In the same way, in Mandera, I've traveled to Mandera, I visited Mandera and Wajir and in some of the areas. The local authorities it must not be something, because ultimately it's government responsibility to look after its citizens. When it can't meet its needs, international community must come and assist. But we must assist the people, but we must push for local authorities to play their part, which means build their capacity, build the learning, share the learning, help build in the contingency where local authorities in Mandera, in Wajir, in these areas are playing their part, that we can push for their capacity to be built up and they to have a role in influencing national policy at Nairobi level, so that you're influencing at the national level but demonstrating at the local level.
What's the future of such a project, or how far do you want it to go?
Well, again, we take Bangladesh as an example. It's the most disaster-prone country in the world. Now, last week, 2 weeks ago, when I was out there, the Bangladesh government have enshrined it into law as a disaster management act. So what we want to see is policies being pushed into law, into a framework in which governments takes into consideration climate change and disaster response. So at the policy level it's recognized, at the government level it's recognized, and support goes out to the local levels in far afield, well beyond Nairobi, well beyond the areas. We don't want it just to be a discussion. We don't want it to just be a talk shop. We need action. And when you go to places, but I'm sure you know your country much better than I do, when you go to the far-flung areas of Mandera and Kenya, and these people need to see the support, these people need to see the development, not just Nairobi or Mombasa, but far and beyond in these areas, because the whole of Kenya is the responsibility of the government and the authorities, not just one part of it, and we want all to be to have a stake in it, to have a strong and prosperous country and beautiful country like Kenya.
The work that you do is through the philanthropic, values of many of the British people.
That's right.
So could you maybe talk to people out there who are viewers of our program about what it is like to give to the needy people?
Okay, I think that the beautiful people, your viewers, the Kenyan people, when I went out there on a number of occasions over the last year, about 4 visits right throughout, really touched my heart. I often say these countries are 2 types, rich and poor. Poor in the sense that they need a lot of support and help. Rich in the hearts of the people in which they're the contribution. And if you, as your viewership reaches out inside from their hearts, as they were when they were living back in Kenya, know the need, reach out deep inside and help their people in Kenya, we can all play a partnership role in helping improve the lives of the people of Kenya and East Africa and far beyond.